You're listening to Little Rockers Radio. Today I'm really happy to be talking to Pinky McKay. It's a name that's well known amongst us mums. She's Australia's most well recognised breastfeeding expert. Hi Pinky, how are you?
Hi Sarah, I'm great, thanks.
Now, I just wanted to start off with a stat actually. Australian National Infant Feeding Survey stats from November last year, I think, they've shown that while 90% of us start breastfeeding our bubs, only around 15% of us are exclusively breastfeeding our bubs to 5 months. Why is this, do you think?
Look, some of it will be, and when we say exclusively breastfeeding, that means breast milk only. So I'd say a lot of women are lacking in confidence, so they reach for a top-up of formula at some stage. Mm-hmm. Some women are having a bit of difficulty with their milk coming in. So some of those stats are a little bit slanted, but there's also a lot of early weaning going on, and I think the fear is around the amount of breast milk women are producing. They're wanting their babies to sleep all night. There's health professionals telling them to give their baby a bottle of formula in the evening to make their baby sleep longer. Actually, the studies show that doesn't work anyway. A mum who exclusively breastfeeds at night time is going to get an extra 45 minutes sleep at night. Now, that doesn't sound much, but it's an awful lot if you're a sleep-deprived mother. It's a little gift. So, and the thing is, you could be introducing potential allergens. There's also confusion about when to start babies on extra food. There's a whole generation of grandmothers who didn't breastfeed. Breastfeeding rates were very, very low in the 70s and 80s. It started to come back a bit in the 80s, 90s, but a lot of grandmothers haven't breastfed, so they're going to be, so there's going to be a lack of support and a lack of good advice within families and communities, I would say. And I think there's lots of good advice out there, but women with newborns and little babies aren't always in a state to go out and find it. And I think it's up to all of us to educate ourselves before we have our babies a little bit, because everyone's thinking up to the birth, aren't they? And you think you're going to go into that hospital and have that baby, and the midwives are going to teach you all about breastfeeding, and they've got you for about 2 days, if you're lucky.
Yeah, we have visions, don't we, of sitting in the corner of our nursery in our rocking chair, beautifully and easily breastfeeding our baby, and it doesn't always work out that way. And that leads on to one of the things that I wanted to ask you. So what are some of the things that family and the broader community can do to actually help support breastfeeding mothers?
I think the family can support that mum and, bring her food, look after her. Partners are apparently, research says they're the biggest factor, support from partners. Never ever ask her when her baby's crying, are you sure you have enough milk? Or you're sure your milk is strong enough? That's more of an older generation kind of one. And look, I'll have to qualify that. I am actually a grandmother, so I'm not digging at grandmothers. We're all learning. I sometimes get flack about, if I mention a grandmother or a partner and I go, you know what, I'm actually a grandmother. I've been there. It's okay. Also, workplace breastfeeding in public, making it, really safe for women to return to work and breastfeed, because a lot of women are returning to work, and all they really need is a private room and an electrical outlet and a fridge. It's not a big ask to have a private room space where that woman can breastfeed. Women have been told, oh, yes, you can breastfeed in a disabled toilet. That's not good enough. That's not an answer. And that women going back to work negotiate or talk to their employers before they even have that baby, perhaps, and say that, look, I'm intending to breastfeed. How can we work this out? Because maybe you can have your baby brought into you at one of your breaks. Maybe you can express at work, and you can talk to your HR people if there's any bad comments. That's discrimination. But I think, the whole community, and particularly with this breastfeeding in public, every time a new mother sees an article in the paper, which doesn't happen a lot, but it gets big publicity when it does, that a woman's discriminated against when she's breastfeeding in a cafe or in public somewhere and she's asked to leave or move to the bathroom, that poor mother at home, or lots of mothers at home with new babies, are going to be looking at it thinking, I'm even more afraid to go out now and breastfeed in public.
That's so true. I remember, mine are older now, 9 and 11, and I breastfed both of them and never really gave a thought as to where I was breastfeeding them. I pretty much just breastfed them when they were hungry. And it wasn't until I saw an article, I can't remember whether it was in a newspaper or a magazine, that had a go at women breastfeeding in public. And that was the first time I kind of went, oh, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about that.
That's right. Because I think as a new mum, you're just that much more vulnerable.
Now, you're behind the social media trend that's celebrating breastfeeding mums and helping remove the stigma of breastfeeding in public. You're encouraging mums to share pics and use the hashtag #WhereAreYouFeedingToday. It's been really popular. Has the popularity of this surprised you?
Well, kind of not really. It's on Instagram. Part of it does, but what surprises me is the wonderful photos we're getting of women breastfeeding. Like, there's a farmer in the back of a wheat harvester. There's a fire, what do you call them? I get hooked on this every time. Not a fireman. What do you call them? Firefighter. Sorry, a firefighter in her uniform doing a training workshop, but she was breastfeeding her baby in her break. There's some really great photos of women who are out and about. They're out having picnics. They're out on boats. Another woman was in a play and she's in her theatre costume. She's an actress and she's sitting feeding her baby, obviously in the wardrobe with more costumes hanging up behind her. There's some wonderful ones. And then there's, a woman multitasking in her kitchen as she's handing a drink to her toddler. She's breastfeeding her baby. So they don't have to be out, but it just shows the natural multitasking, women getting on with their lives and breastfeeding being a part of it. They're not defined by, being a breastfeeding mum.
Now, there's so many, I'd like to say crazy, but there's so many opinions out there, and sometimes some of them get some traction, which just adds to the already confusing, conflicting and guilt-driven feeling that so many of us get as parents anyway. But there's lots of information out there about tooth decay and feeding our bubs or breastfeeding our bubs at night, about breastfeeding leading to our children developing a sweet tooth. Can you comment on these and set the record straight?
Oh, yes, and I've commented in the media on them as well, the broader media too, and it's gone viral about, breastfeeding and sugar and sweet tooth. Yes, breast milk is sweet, and the sugars in breast milk actually have all sorts of roles for fighting bacteria and gut health. They're not like, swallowing a tablespoon of cane sugar or anything like that, and it's what the tastes of your breast milk. There is research that the flavours in your breast milk actually influence the baby's taste preferences. So, and babies like different tastes. If you've got mastitis, you can eat garlic and your baby will empty your breasts more. Not only will the garlic have that antibiotic effect. I'm not saying don't take antibiotics here, so don't misconstrue that. If you do need them, you do need them. Get medical help. But, this will help your baby empty your breast. Babies love vanilla-flavoured milk. So we actually have vanilla-flavoured Booby Bickies, which are our lactation cookies. We've gone into this research. Cinnamon and spices are used in other countries, and the babies seem to enjoy this kind of milk. But if, like an Indian baby will eat curry because he's been introduced to this curry flavour through his mother's milk. So when he starts on solids, he will be fine eating that. I don't know, my child loved his olives and feta when he got onto them, probably. Depending on, you can eat interesting, a wide variety of healthy foods in their natural state as a breastfeeding mother, and your baby will get those flavours through his milk. There's another study that shows that babies are more likely to eat vegetables if the mother's eaten her vegetables while she's breastfeeding. So, those flavours are good. And the sugar and the nighttime breastfeeding absolutely doesn't cause tooth decay, because I've actually got 5 adult children with only one of them's had a filling, and it was because he fell over in the shopping centre and broke a tooth when he was one of his baby teeth, so he needed something done to it. But, the rest of them got to adulthood without, because I was laughing, one of them had a wisdom tooth that was looking like it was slow coming through, and I laughed at the dentist. My kid was about 16, and I said, is this urgent? And he said, no. I said, can we leave it till he's a wage earner? And and it was sort of a bit of a joke between us. But no, they have no dental caries, and they were all breastfed at night time to a reasonably ripe age. It varied between kids. But the night milk actually, when a baby is breastfeeding, it draws that nipple up behind the hard and soft palate, the junction there, and the milk squirts down the baby's throat. If the baby stops sucking, the breast falls out of their mouth. Whereas with a bottle, if you put a baby to bed with a bottle, the milk will keep dripping into their mouth and it can pull around their teeth. So there's a difference in the sucking, and, because you'll see quite often you'll see pictures of a baby with what's called bottle mouth syndrome, and that's a child who's probably been put to bed and left with a bottle. You know, if your formula-fed baby needs a night feed, hold them and cuddle them and give them that night feed and take the bottle out when they're finished. Like, it's not as simple as saying a night feed will cause tooth decay. And, you know, mothers being told not to give their babies night feeds, or they don't need their night feeds after, 8 weeks, 3 months, 5 months, whatever the person advising you says, it's pretty tough on a mother when she's up awake with a hungry baby. She really does need to give them night feeds.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how mums cope with that. I mean, I continue to breastfeed my kids through the night up until they no longer needed it anymore. And one of the reasons that I did that was it was just so much easier.
Yes.
I wasn't up trying to pat them back to sleep. It was just easier to put them on the boob, feed them, get them back to sleep, and then put them back to bed.
And you stay in that lovely, relaxed, calm state yourself, so you can get back to sleep more easily. And I think this is where that extra 45-minute sleep comes in. You know, you breastfeed at night, your hormones are released, your oxytocin, which is nice and relaxing, and you go back to sleep more easily, rather than by the time you get up, you warm a bottle, you're wide awake, and it's very hard to get back to sleep. And the other thing is with the night milk, night breast milk is very high in tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin. And we now know that 80% of our serotonin receptors are in our gut. And as well as this tryptophan and becoming, helping with the serotonin, there are receptors in the baby's gut that actually help it, or there's components in the milk that actually help the baby develop the serotonin receptors. And this is a lifetime wellness thing. There's going to be all sorts of reasons for people developing depression or anxiety later on in their life. But if we give those babies the chance that they need to develop those receptors, and it might be milk at 10 p.m, it might not necessarily be, that your baby feeds all night long, but I think we need to trust our babies when they give up the night feeds, that's going to be what's right for them, rather than forcing it on a very young baby.
Now, for any new mums that are listening that are struggling with breastfeeding, what are some top tips or advice that you have for them?
I would say contacting the Australian Breastfeeding Association. They've got a free helpline. Calling in a lactation consultant sooner rather than later. You're never a worried mother. You are a worried mother, but, your worry is never unfounded. If you're anxious about anything, if your baby's having difficulty latching, and I would say lots of, skin-to-skin cuddles, we hear about that at birth. But I like to say to mums, Netflix and chill, just spend a day with your baby, with your top off or your top open, your baby naked from the waist up, a blanket over both of you so the baby's warm enough if it's cool. Watch a movie, snuggle your baby, and having a feeding basket, setting up a feeding basket with a bottle of water, some snacks in it, so you're there, you're sitting, you're feeding, you're cuddling. That's going to boost your milk-making hormones. You're going to get very aware of your baby's early, subtle hunger signals, and you're going to be able to feed that baby as soon as it will latch on the breast. Just forget all the things about routines and watching the clock. Watch your baby for those early hunger signals, like hand to mouth or sucking on their tongue, sucking movements, or turning their head towards you and trying to latch on, and letting them feed as much as they want to. And look, one of the things you can put in your feeding basket are some booby bickies. We have cookies for breastfeeding mums, and we've actually, while there's no actual research about the actual bickies, there is a lot of European research about various ingredients that work on the beta-glucan, and some of the cereals will actually work on the prolactin receptors and production. So it will help give those mothers a boost of energy, a boost of nourishment, and it can just make quite a difference to some mums. Some mums, it's still always important to address any underlying reasons though, because if you've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you've got diabetes perhaps, if you've got the retained placenta, there's all sorts of reasons for your milk supply taking a while to kick in. So, and women are, their individual metabolism and physiology all vary. So it's worth just checking lifestyle factors like, oral contraceptives or smoking or, being really stressed. They can all play a part too.
And for anyone who's listening who wants to find out more about you or get in contact with you, how can they reach out?
my website, pinkymckay.com, and for Booby Bickies, it's boobybickies.com.au. And we deliver all over Australia, but we've got stockists everywhere. So, but reading more, we have a good blog with lots of breastfeeding information too. So it's worth reading up. We've also got a free ebook, Making More Mummy Milk Naturally. So you can download that free ebook too from the Booby Bickies website.
Okay, and we'll pop all of the links up on our website too at www.littlerockersradio.com.au. Thank you so much for joining us today, Pinky.
Thank you for having me.
That was the lovely Pinky McKay on Little Rockers Radio. Thanks so much for listening.